There are so many different kinds of aquarium filter media when you go into any pet store. So today I'm going to go over different kinds of chemical filtration media that are out there and what they are typically used for. So you can decide the best options for your aquarium situation. So what is chemical filtration? Chemical filtration media works by binding molecules to the outside of the media. You can kind of sort of think of it as a filter sponge that works at the molecular level. Now, I have 4 different kinds in front of me, but I will be discussing other types than what you see. I want to start off by saying that all too often people try to use chemical filter media to solve a problem in the aquarium without actually getting down to the root cause of that issue. So very often people try to use the chemical filter media as a band-aid. And in many cases, that's all it is. Just a band-aid. It's not going to permanently fix the issue. So just bear that in mind. Now, I will talk about good term uses for a lot of these, and many of them are very handy to have on hand. So stick with me. This first one here, this is a pre-packed bag of activated carbon. It is one of the most common types of filter media in the hobby. You can see that this one is kind of like pellet shaped, but it comes in all kinds of different sizes and shapes. It depends on the brand. Pretty much every fish company makes it. It's really easy to buy in bulk. It's in every pet store, and it's one of the most common types of filter media used. Now, carbon is used to remove color, odor, chlorine, medications, and heavy metal from the water. So I'm going to start with the heavy metal. Unless you have a very old house with very old pipes that are leaching heavy metal into the water, that's probably not going to be a very common issue for most people. And later in this video, I am going to talk about an alternative option in the event that you do need to remove heavy metals from your water. When it comes down to chlorine, if you are using your tap conditioner correctly, you should not have any chlorine in your water. So for the most part, I don't think, carbon's going to do you any good there. Now, for medications, it is very good to have on hand for medication. So I always keep a bag. I don't use carbon, but I always keep a bag around. If you ever need to medicate your aquarium fish after your medication period is over, you need to pop some carbon in the filter for a week or so to get it all pulled out of the water. So having carbon always on hand somewhere is excellent for that. I recommend everybody keep a appropriate size bag for their filter somewhere for that case. Now, people are most commonly buying carbon to remove odor or color from the water. If your water is turning a yellow or a brown color, or it smells funky, then you got a bigger issue. That is typically caused by an abundance of organic rotting material in your tank, such as fish poop, leaves that have fallen off of live plants, uneaten fish food, things like that. So if you have that problem, you want to vacuum out your gravel very good to get any poop or uneaten food that has gotten trapped underneath. Move around the decor in your tank and vacuum around that, because poop and food very easily gets trapped underneath the edges of decor and goes unseen. If you have snails or shrimp, any kind of invert like that in your tank, check them all. Make sure there's not a dead one hiding somewhere, because snails especially, but most inverts, when they die, they very rapidly turn into ammonia and just foul up the water. If your water is a cloudy white color, that could just be a lot of dissolved things in your water that aren't being picked up by your filter pad. And we'll touch more on that in video part number 3 of this series. But it could also be a sudden bloom of algae as well. And again, just better tank maintenance. Do your gravel vacuuming, do your water changes regularly, and don't feed your fish as much food as frequently. Decrease the amount and frequency of food. That will all help you get colored and smelly water under control. If you're having that issue, another problem is you could just have too many fish and too small of a tank and too weak of a filter that it just can't keep up. And also another common cause is that you did not cycle your tank properly, or you do not have enough biofiltration media in that tank. So I have a whole video about biofiltration media. Go check that out if you need to. So I don't use carbon. I pretty much feel that if you're cleaning your tank properly and you're not overstocked and you're being mindful of how much food you're feeding your tank, that color and odor really shouldn't be an issue. You really should not have a need for carbon. And if you have a planted tank, it can actually interfere with the growth of some plants by picking up some trace nutrients. So keep that in mind. Another note on colored water. Leaves and real wood in your tank release something called tannins into the water, which do naturally stain your water a light brown, kind of like a weak tea color. And some people actually put wood and leaves in their tank to create that color on purpose, because many of the common fish, such as tetras and angelfish, to name 2, in the aquarium hobby actually come from black water streams where the water is a very low pH, it's got tons of leaves and wood in it, and it is that brown color. So some people do that deliberately. So if you have a brownish yellow colored water and you have real wood, such as Mopani is like one of the worst, I think, for dyeing it. That could be why you have the color. So you can either take the wood out to counterbalance that, or that would be a case where if you want to run some carbon because you want to keep the wood but you don't like the brown look, throw some carbon in there. All right. So on to the next thing I have. This is the Seachems C Gel. It is a combination of carbon, which are the black ones there, and then the white pieces is Phospho Guard. So this is kind of a case where carbon's different sizes and different shapes. This bead shape is really nice because the individual pieces of carbon touch each other less on all sides. It stays nice and loose in your tank, so it moves around and kind of flows in the flow of the water. And you can buy this round carbon, it's called Seachems Matrix Carbon, by itself if that's what you want. Now onto the Phosguard, which are the white pieces there. So Phosguard, the Seachem version, removes phosphates and silicates out of your water. Now, phosphates and silicates, if you got an abundance of in your tank, algae loves that. And it'll really flourish. So, oftentimes people buy Phosguard if they're having an algae problem. It'll kind of help get things under control. However, if you have a lot of phosphates. One of the common sources of phosphate, again, just like with the carbon, is an abundance of decaying organic matter in your tank. So you want to evaluate that if you're having an algae problem. Also, live plants will actually help outcompete algae for the same nutrition sources as the algae uses. So live plants can really help nip algae in the bud before it starts. Now, where PhosGuard really comes in handy is, unfortunately, another very common source in the aquarium for phosphates and for silicates is tap water. And unless you're buying bottled water, which gets expensive and you gotta lug it, or you're going to put money into an RIDO unit, there's really nothing you can do about the phosphates and the silicates going into your tank from your tap water when you do a water change. So running PhosGuard in your aquarium filter to kind of counterbalance that is very handy. I honestly really wish I would have bought the straight PhosGuard instead of this mixed, and honestly I'm probably going to give this mix away and buy just PhosGuard. Some other sources of phosphate in the aquarium: carbon does bring any small amount of phosphate. Phosphate is also found in various water additives such as salt, fertilizers, pH buffers, and chemicals to adjust the hardness of your water. So you don't want to run PhosGuard in a saltwater tank. If you are fertilizing your live plants, you may want to reevaluate what kind of fertilizer you're using, because of course not all brands and formulas of fertilizer are exactly the same. Some will have more phosphorus in it than others. If you're using a combo fertilizer such as Seachems Pure, for example, to help keep your red plants, such as the cardinal plant, that nice red color, maybe you want to consider switching to a just iron supplement instead, if you're having that algae issue and you want to lower how much phosphate's coming into your tank. Silicate will also enter your aquarium through live rocks and sand. Do note that certain rocks will actually raise your pH and act just like a pH buffer powder that you can buy. Lace rock and limestone are two examples of such rocks that will do this. So if you're buying rocks to raise your pH and make your water harder for something such as African cichlids, you do not want to run a phosphate remover, because it's going to counterbalance what you're trying to do with that rock. But if it's the right situation for you, just running a straight PhosGuard in your filter, definitely a good idea. Now, every brand, there's several other companies that make something similar. API makes one called PhosZorb. And then there's also a PhosBan, and I forget what company makes that. And there's also ClearMax, which is made by Reusable. The ClearMax by Reusable also removes nitrate, and it's a resin-based media. The only brand that I know of off the top of my head that removes phosphate and silicates is the Seachem PhosGuard, but like always, just read your bottles when you're buying to find out. Now, this other media, this white gravel looking stuff I have over here, this is called Zeolite. It also goes by the trade name Ammonia Chips and Ammozorb, depending on the brand name. Again, different shapes, different sizes. Typically it is this white gravel looking stuff, and this removes ammonia from your water. And this is most definitely one of those just a band-aid sort of cases, because if you got a bunch of ammonia, there's a reason for it. This will help remove some of it. It's really good at helping you get your aquarium back under control. But you need to find out why you are having an ammonia spike. Are you just not changing your water enough? Are you not vacuuming your gravel enough? Do you have a snail somewhere that died? Are you overfeeding the tank? Again, pretty much all the same things that can cause smelly, dirty water that we talked about with the carbon. So you always want to evaluate that. I want to note this, what's nice about this zeolite is I've noticed when it is exhausted and needs replaced, it tends to turn a yellow-pink color, which is pretty cool because it's kind of like a built-in, like, tell on when it needs replaced. So, that's neat. Now, you will notice that pretty much these three that I just talked, well, these two, they're just loose in a jar. This one's pre-bagged. Most people buy the pre-bagged, but it is a lot cheaper to just buy a big jar like this of a loose media and put it into your own filter bag. You can either buy a nylon, like pantyhose stocking from Walmart or the dollar store, cut off the end, fill it up, tie it up, and throw it in your filter, and then you just throw it out and cut a new piece every time you need to change your media. Or you can buy these reusable filter media bags, and this is one of them. This is like the larger size for like biomedia, but you can kind of see I have one in there. Top Fin and a bunch of companies make these really fine nylon mesh bags that have a drawstring that you just fill up with your loose media like this, however much you need, tie it shut, and then when it's time to change your media, you just untie the bag, dump the media in the trash, and then fill it up with fresh and put it back in your filter. It saves so much money compared to buying anything pre-packaged, already sealed up in the filter media bag, especially if you're using a lot of it. Now, for things like the zeolite and the carbon, if you're just keeping it on hand for emergencies, go ahead, buy it prepackaged if you want, but it's really up to you. If you're running something like the Phosguard regularly, definitely just get the big container full, put it in your own filter media bag. You're going to save a whole lot of money. Now, the last one I have over here. This is a resin media. It is a man-made kind of polymer, and it typically, the resin base, they have a better absorption rate per centimeter than the other types of media we talked about. Some brands, you can even clean them or recharge them and keep using them for many years. This one in my hand is Seachems Pure again. It removes organics out of your water. Again, if you got a lot of organic in your water, you got something rotten somewhere, you're overfeeding your fish, etc. This one is the Pure again. This is one that you recharge, the Seachems Pure again. You soak it in bleach, rinse it, and you keep doing that till it goes back to its natural color, which is this like white, light tan color. You'll notice that mine is brown. That's because this is one that's used up and needs recharged. So you soak it in bleach solution till it goes back to its regular color, rinse it well, and then soak it in a bucket with water containing tap conditioner, because bleach is a chlorine and tap conditioner deactivates chlorine. So, and you'll notice this isn't like a regular nylon bag. You can hear it. It is actually a woven plastic bag, and the Seachem brand, it comes in this. And you don't want to really use nylon because bleach will eventually break it down and destroy it. So the plastic bags are the best. And Seachems, I think all of their rechargeable resins come in a bag like this. And I think you can also buy these plastic woven bags separately. Now some other brands. API makes one, a resin, an organic absorbing resin that is mixed with carbon that they call Biochemsorb. And then there's also Chem C Pure, which is also an organic absorbing resin mixed with carbon. And it has various formulas. They do have a formula that also removes copper mixed in with that. The Biochemsorb and the Chem C Pure are not rechargeable. So you have to throw them out and put a new one in. I mean, honestly, I just buy my carbon separate, use it as I need it for medications or whatever. And then I bought, as you can see, the Pure again separate. To me, that's just a lot cheaper because I got the Pure Gem and I'll pretty much have it for many years before I'll probably just be like, this one's not recharging well and get a new one. So Seachem, remember how I said there's another option if you do have old pipes that leach copper or other heavy metals into your tank. Seachem makes a resin media called Reusable. It removes copper and heavy metals from the water, and it is a rechargeable resin. And again, I believe it comes in one of these bags. The Reusable will turn this dark, like blue-black color once it is depleted. And to recharge it, you soak it in a solution of muriatic, muriatic acid, which you find with pool supplies. And again, you just keep rinsing. You rinse it and re-soak it till it turns back to its normal color. And then you want to put it in a bucket of water and add sodium bicarbonate until the foaming stops to make sure that you've successfully neutralized any of the muriatic acid in it. And then you rinse it again, and the Reusable is good to use. That can also, the Reusable might be very handy as well if you have very sensitive species in your aquarium. Some very sensitive invertebrates. So Reusable, great option. Recharge it. You have it for life. So if you don't need to use carbon, why use it? And then the last kind of resin media I'm going to go over, you can buy something called a softener pillow, which removes calcium and magnesium out of the water. So this is going to kind of soften your water if you got harder tap water. And by softening your water, it is also going to reduce that like white crust that a lot of people, or the white spots they get on the glass and around the top of their aquarium. Water softener pillows are also rechargeable by soaking in freshwater salt solution. The softener pillow I looked at was made by API, and of course they recommend their freshwater aquarium salt. Now the downside of the softener pillows is that they only work for 48 hours and then need recharged over, I think it's about a 24-hour period. So keep that in mind. If you really, really need soft water for really sensitive fish, such as discus and dwarf ram cichlids are some good examples. They suffer from kidney and liver failure if there is too much calcium and magnesium and other like hard water ions in the water. So they absolutely need soft water. So if you're keeping something sensitive like that, don't even bother with a water softener pillow. I have tried one. It does not do much, especially since it's only active for 48 hours. At that point, you're going to want to buy bottled distilled water, or you're going to want to invest in a RIDO unit, which makes completely neutral, completely soft water. So keep that in mind. People that buy RIDO units, you most commonly hear of it with saltwater fish keepers. And they do that because they have full control over the hardness and the salinity. But mainly it's, as I mentioned, the phosphates and the silicates that tap water brings in. You don't have that in distilled or RIDO water, and marine algae grows like wildfire on tap water because of the phosphate and the silicate content. And I mean, it's crazy. It's harder to get rid of than freshwater algae, and it'll just take over a marine tank and kill all the corals. So that's why you typically hear of that. One last thing that I want to note. If you are strapped for filter space, a lot of these products, the carbon, the zeolite, and the PhosphoGuard, you can actually find where they are coated onto or infused into filter pads, so that you can actually buy a 2-in-1 sort of media to save space in your filter if that happens to be an issue for you. But as I said, you know, carbon, in most cases, really only good to run when you need to remove a medication. Zeolite, it's good to keep a little on hand in case of emergency to get a sudden ammonia spike under control. If you got, you know, you find a dead fish 3 days later stuck in behind something where you didn't notice it and you get an ammonia spike, it's great for that. But it's not stuff that most people are going to need to run in their filter 24/7, as long as they're being mindful about their tank maintenance and they are doing the tank cleaning and water changes to keep the organic matter under control. That's going to lead to a lot of the issues that is used for. If you have any questions, drop them below. And there'll be one more video yet in this series, so look for that.